What's going on, animators? Aaron here from CG RIFF, and I'm so excited to welcome our very special guest today for episode 9 of the CG RIFF Animation Podcast. None other than Mr. Jacob Gardner is here today. Jacob's had a long and storied career in the animation industry. He spent about a decade over at DreamWorks before charting his own path and is doing some very exciting things in his current role as a partner and head of animation at Agora Studio. And they're kicking out some incredible projects. They're attached to The Witness and Jibaro from Love, Death, and Robots. Some really cool projects like the Meeps. Just keep seeing awesome things coming out of there, and we're really excited to get into it and kind of hear about what your journey's been like so far and what you've been up to. So thank you again for joining us today, Jacob, and welcome.
Of course, and thank you for inviting me. This is awesome, and I'm super honored to be a part of your podcast. So thank you.
Yeah, well, let's get right down to it. So let's start at the beginning. We like to take people all the way back. Where did you come up, and how did you find your way into the animation industry? Was this something that you always wanted to do, or what was that sort of journey like, being drawn into this art form?
Okay. You want to go really far back?
Yeah, take us back.
So I had always liked art and drawing, and so as a kid I was drawing all the time. I never really got all that great, but I was always drawing. And I specifically remember seeing, I'm going to date myself now, but The Lion King in theaters. I was probably around 10, maybe 9. But that kind of stuck with me, and I had not known, like, I wanted to be a part of that. And I didn't even know that animator was a job at the time, but I knew that, like, people had created that thing, the movie The Lion King, and I wanted to be a part of it. And later I learned that there were people actually drawing every frame, and that was kind of what set me on my path. And since then I wanted to be an animator or a part of the process in some way of making things come alive that weren't alive. I thought that was really cool. So I was chasing that ever since.
Wow. Okay. So you and I have a kind of pretty similar story and even timeline, I think, with that. So where did you grow up? Like, was art a part of your, like, childhood in terms of, like, were there artists in your family, or was it supported in terms of that, or was there any kind of friction there?
Yeah. No, my family was super supportive, but neither of my parents were artists. My mom was a dietitian and my dad was a CPA, an accountant, for a while, and he switched careers after that. But nobody was an artist, and so I don't think that they were able to, like, see exactly what I wanted or guide in specific terms, but they were super supportive all the time, and buying me materials and drawing pads and everything like that. And even when I had said, eventually I wanted to go to college for animation, there was no pushback. There was no, like, are you sure you don't want a real job sort of thing. They were very encouraging.
Awesome.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that's what you hope for. Very good. So where did you end up studying? Where'd you go to learn?
I went to Bowling Green State University, which is not known for its animation program, but there has been a number of great people that have come out of there. And I got very lucky after graduating to be a part of some special things that were going on, and one of them was SIGGRAPH. In 2007, they were holding the SIGGRAPH conference isn't like a tech and animation conference, but that was the year they were trying like an Iron Animator event, like Iron Chef, where teams of 3 animators would make a short film on site at the conference for 32 hours straight. And so me and my 2 best friends from college signed up, and somehow we got accepted to be one of the teams, and we were part of that competition, which was really fun and cool.
A lot of I guess Red Bull or coffee or whatever to last for a day and a half. That's crazy.
They gave a lot of really cool talks throughout it, like some from Navy SEALs about sleep deprivation and how that affects your brain and your decision making and stuff like that. So we made sure, at least on our team, that everybody got at least 2 hours of sleep.
Oh, okay. Just to take some shifts.
I think some teams tried to make it the whole way through. I'm not sure how many of them did, but it was a long time to try to stay awake, and you could certainly feel the fatigue and the decision making and the choices.
Yeah.
Across the 32 hours. Yeah.
Cool. So did that garner you some recognition in terms of did that lead to any job opportunities or connections like that?
It led directly to it. we were lucky enough to be the winning team on that competition, and part of the prize was that we got to go to DreamWorks Animation and get a tour of the studio and have dinner with a couple heads of animation from some of the current films, which was really cool, and unlike anything I had ever seen before. Growing up in the Midwest and going to school in the Midwest, and then going to SIGGRAPH and then sleeping 2 hours across like 3 days or something, and then sleeping on the floor of a very overcrowded hotel room that like 7 people were renting with us because we were broke college kids. We couldn't afford anything, so we were sleeping like on the floor of a hotel room. And then the very next day we were driven in a limo to DreamWorks, and then DreamWorks then put us up in like a 5-star hotel where each one of us had our own separate room. It was a very crazy experience, but also so was getting to have dinner with some super talented heads of animation. And that was kind of like, it wasn't an interview, but I guess after that there was no need for an interview, because the interview is to get to know you, to see how you fit as, like if you would fit into the team, things like that.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of the interview. And this was just a dinner. We were just like BSing and having fun and chatting and everything about all things. And that kind of, I guess, served as an interview also anyway. But then they offered me a job a couple weeks after that.
That's incredible.
Amazing.
Like you said, to come from a school that is not one of the kind of prestige animation programs, and then get come straight into DreamWorks is such a testament to your hard work, of course, and your talent and your skill and personality. Like you said, you got the interview is important. People kind of put everything into a demo reel, but you also you have to kind of get in the door in that way as well. So that I think your personality is certainly one that I think affords you those opportunities as well. So that's good. Very cool.
Thank you for saying so. You're very kind, but I think there was also a lot of luck involved.
Always,
right place, right time, happenstance, and things like that.
That's all ingredients to this journey. But so wow, okay. So what was your first I guess show at DreamWorks? When did you start?
I started in 2007 on Monsters vs. Aliens. That was my first project, and I was a background animator, so doing a bunch of people like running and screaming away from the monsters that would be on like the Golden Gate Bridge or something like that. And I remember that I tried to make all of them super fun and interesting and unique. It's like a weird line that you have to walk, because they can't be so unique that it can't be repeated a bunch of times in the same shot.
Yeah.
And have like 5 of the same dude that are slightly offset. So it can't be like super calling attention to itself, but you can also make them special and fun and unique so that it's not just a boring walk cycle or boring run cycle.
Yeah.
There's something flavorful to it. And I think that's what made people notice me as well, and gave me chances on some actual shot work with characters. During that film I got to do like 3 shots with the actual characters that were like acting stuff and not just background people that would be put into crowd systems, which was super fun and so scary. And then after that I did the same thing again on Shrek 4, and then on Shrek 4 they told me that I'll start training my replacements so that I could move up to be a regular shot animator.
Awesome. Okay.
So that was thrilling.
So yeah, that's pretty direct path even there. And like you say, taking the extra effort to put some specificity into even those background characters, I think, like you said, kind of set you apart or got you noticed in that way. So that's really cool. So what was that transition like from being a student to now you're in there, you're making, working on feature films? Like, was that kind of a big transition? And, again, coming kind of from
Absolutely.
the Midwest, and now you're out kind of doing the thing in Glendale. Like, what was that like?
Scary. It was very scary. Definitely, I'm sure that everybody feels very similar with that first job situation, but I felt like I shouldn't be there. I felt like there was nothing that would put me there, or that my skills made me fit in with any of the people at that studio that were so talented. It was scary. And I would go to every single dailies, even if I was not showing anything, but I would go to watch and listen and learn and see everybody's work, especially in progress, and see what kind of notes were given and what people would look at and what made things strong, or what made them funny, or what made them not work. And that was such a learning experience. And I think that helped guide me and teach me a few things as I went. And then also with DreamWorks, they have an internal system where you can watch pretty much every version of every shot in every sequence of any movie that is in production, past or present. And so I would also just look back at old stuff or old shots and see the progression of, like, this was the very first play blast they made, and then this was 3 days later, and then this one was the final version, and try and like see the process of how different people worked and how different things came to be and the progression and evolution of different stuff. And I think that taught me so much. Really, just being around people that are so talented can help you elevate your own work, because you start to see the things that they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so that helped a lot.
And it seems like taking that initiative and kind of having that hunger to make sure that you're in the room and that you're kind of soaking it all up, I'm sure kind of expedites that process as well. So when you started, were there other people kind of starting with you, or were you like the only new guy, or was there like an intake of several guys so you're kind of, who were sort of coming in at the same time?
Good question. So Brandon Beckstead and I were sharing an office, and he was the other background cycles animator on Monsters vs. Aliens. I don't remember exactly if he had started a while before me or right at the same time as me, but I feel like we were both fairly new at it at the same time. He had a little bit more experience coming into it than I did, though. I was fresh out of school. And then there were a handful of other animators, like regular shot animators, that had started a couple months before me. But there wasn't like a bonding or camaraderie at that point because of that. We weren't going through training together or anything like that. But I did learn later on that they had started just before me. And later on, we were very good friends, probably being similar ages and similar, paths in and things like that.
Sometimes that helps, when you're kind of you're dropped into the studio environment. You're like, kind of a fish out of water a little bit, and sometimes coming through that with some other guys can be helpful. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So me and Brandon Beckstead would be that. We shared an office together. We were going through the same things together. We were working on the same film, doing the same background characters together, and started, I think, about the same time.
Awesome. And so MVA, were you guys, was this still emo at the time, or you guys had they already switched over to Primo, or has that not happened yet?
No, Primo was way later.
Okay.
Yeah, that was still emo. So that's the software, proprietary software at DreamWorks, where there was no, like, you couldn't tumble while playing back. It was all you could do was play blast. So you'd have to choose a camera view and then play blast. Basically, you couldn't hit play and then also spin around the character at the same time. It was a very slow process, but it taught me a lot too, because then you had to know what you were doing. There was a little less of like finding it along the way and just move stuff and hit play and move stuff and hit play. It was kind of like you have to make decisions, because it's going to take a while to watch this back. You're going to have to play blast every single time you want to watch it, essentially.
Was that quite a bit of learning curve coming? I'm assuming in college you were using Maya.
Oh, yeah.
So
it was, and there were a lot of cool things that Emo could do that Maya couldn't, which was awesome. But once Primo showed up, which was the next evolution of, they rewrote software from the ground up, that was played back real time, no matter what, and you could do everything you wanted, spin and tumble, and you could even change. You could grab stuff and move curves while it's playing, and it will automatically buffer without slowing down or anything, so it never stops the playback.
I've heard nothing but good things about
cool.
about Primo. It sounds like it's magic.
I miss Primo.
Yeah.
I'm no longer able to use it, and I miss it. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Cool. So you're in there now, and you become a shop animator, I guess you said, on Shrek 4. Was that okay? So what was some of the rest of your what's like kind of the next steps of your evolution while you were there?
Let's see. I'm definitely gonna miss some, but it did things like Puss in Boots, the first one. Let's see, Megamind.
Oh, I love Megamind.
Megamind was before that one.
That's
I
fun.
had a lot of fun on Megamind. Megamind was awesome. There was a little bit on Madagascar 3, Rise of the Guardians. You put me on the spot, and I'm driving.
No, I know there's a lot of them. I did my homework on
Trolls and Home
on IMDb, because I know you. I think you did probably Penguins of Madagascar. I think you did some
Penguins. That was really challenging. The style of I am very much drawn to more of a naturalistic side of acting and animation and stuff, and so I actually think I feel like I did Rise of the Guardians and then Penguins of Madagascar back to back. that was like stylistic whiplash.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was hard for me to do penguins. I don't think that I succeeded all that great either, but like trying to get into the cartooniness and the snappiness of it was really fun and daunting, and a struggle for me. Then there was like Home and Trolls, Boss Baby. Those were the last ones I did before I left.
A lot of the cartoony stuff you were on, right?
Those aren't as extreme, but there's like a middle ground in there that I felt some comfort zone in, because things like Home, and even in Trolls, there are really cartoony moments, and then there's also very like soft and tender and a little bit more naturalistic moments, and we kind of walked a tightrope in there a little bit, bouncing back and forth. And I tended to do some of the more grounded stuff, and left the super fun, zany, crazy stuff to the people that are way better at it than I am.
Okay, so this, I mean, let's flash forward. We're going to continue and pick up there, but asking now, looking back, is that still your preference? Do you still kind of gravitate towards the kind of more naturalistic, kind of more subtler performances?
Definitely.
Okay, that's the sweet spot for you?
Definitely,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That, for me, that's where I feel comfortable. Things that are like snappy and cartoony and everything, I love, but I struggle. And it's an area that I definitely need to learn more about, and it's a challenge every time I do it. And I do bounce back and forth between styles all the time now, but it's harder for me. Yeah.
So let's I guess segue from that. Let's get into your process a little bit for approaching a shot. Oftentimes, obviously, someone who's gravitates towards those kind of more naturalistic performances. Or do you usually like shoot a lot of reference, or do you do thumbnailing, or what's kind of your way in to kind of finding the performance?
Excellent question. I do a lot of reference. I can't thumbnail, or even if I do, I find it not useful for my process. So I left that behind a long time ago. I did thumbnail. I remember I have books of some thumbnails from earlier films at DreamWorks, but I left it behind at some point. That I feel like even on the cartoonier stuff, I shoot reference, and I find ways to make the reference more indicative of what it is that I want to accomplish. For example, on Trolls, I did a test with Cooper where he's playing the harmonica, and to make it more fun and more snappy than if I just shot reference of myself playing a harmonica like this, I used my hand so that I can be much faster and like be Muppety and kind of throw his head back and like move real fast. And so I got kind of the timing and flavor from that. And so it was still shooting reference as opposed to thumbnailing.
That's good. Yeah, that's a really good tip. I like that. Cool. That's good. I always like people come at animation from so many different ways and styles and strengths and preferences and all these things. So it's always good to pick people's brain a little bit and how they approach that. So at what point during your time at DreamWorks did you get into teaching? So I'll let everyone know Jacob was one of my instructors at iAnimate many years ago. Is where we first crossed paths. But how did you find your way into teaching?
It was an honor having you in class, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
It was fantastic to work with you and collaborate. I love the process of talking through acting shots with people and finding the best version of something and helping to push things. So the way that I got into that was that Jason Ryan was starting up iAnimate around the time that we were working together on Megamind, which I do think was my third movie, because that was like 2010. I was started in 2007. I think I was on Megamind in 2010, and Jason had asked me, and I initially said no, because like I've only been doing this for 3 years, and what could I possibly offer to somebody? And he convinced me. He said, you have stuff to share. I think that people should learn from you. And that was an amazing vote of confidence. And so I reluctantly said, I'll try it. I'll try it for you. Thank you for including me. And I only felt comfortable teaching the first workshop, because I thought, if I feel like I have nothing to say, I'll at least just teach the basics, right? I'll talk to people who don't know the basics. I'll talk to them about the basics. And I did that for a little while. I don't know how long, but eventually I felt a little bit more comfortable with the process of like figuring out what goes through my head in order to help explain it to other people and help explain things in different ways so that everybody can learn in different styles of learning how they understand things. And the process of being an instructor is really challenging and introspective. Like you have to like dissect your own process in order to help someone else. And so that was really helpful to me as well. I don't know how long I stayed at workshop 1, but eventually I was like, okay, I feel comfortable enough talking about performance that I really want to go where I feel comfortable, which is the more grounded, like facial acting and body performance stuff, which is my comfort zone, I guess, and the stuff that really excites me. And I love to talk about finding out all those things about the character, how they move and how they hold themselves, and what makes something entertaining to watch, I guess, in a way that doesn't excite me about body mechanics. And also, you're probably going to ask me at some point, what are the hardest shots for me? Definitely physicality, because I feel comfortable doing like performance stuff, fighting and like flips and punches and kicks and stuff like that. That stuff scares me, and that stuff I struggle with the most.
Were you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember you saying this. Were you on the like the Jack Frost team on Guardians?
Yeah,
because he had a fair bit of like
Yeah.
that kind of phicality, and as well as obviously some really kind of subtle, tender, naturalistic acting as well. Did you have to do some of that stuff, or?
I'm trying to think. There was a little bit of physicality I did, but nothing like the crazy like flying on the air stuff that Ben Willis did some really awesome stuff in there, and I did not do that physical stuff. I did a lot more of the subtle acting stuff, which everybody on the team did as well, because there's so much of it.
Yeah.
But that was where I gravitated.
Well, that's one that brings up an interesting point. I've always noticed that for whatever reason, as opposed to like say Sony and their kind of business model, DreamWorks tends to run with a really small team. On per show, like when the credits run, it's there's got like 30-40 guys versus like 200 on some of these other films.
Yeah.
So you get to maybe touch more things, or kind of have like maybe larger amount of ownership with your team on that, which is pretty cool, and it gives you
Exactly.
opportunity to touch a lot of things. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and it's really cool because then you know every single person on the team, and you start to know the characters so good because you're spending a longer amount of time on it. If you can move faster when you have 200 people on the team, but when you've only got like a crew of 40 or 60 or something, then things go a little bit slower. But everybody is doing more of it, so there's more consistency, or people get to learn the characters better, and things like that.
Yeah, that ramp up is so important. Like your first set of shots, you're like finding your way through it, but then but by your fifth set, you really know them, and you feel like you can.
We always said that you really understand the characters on the last week of the project,
Right.
and
When it's too late.
that's when you've hit your stride. That's when you can like pump them out real fast. Is on the last week.
Which just happens to coincide with when they need them real fast. So I guess that's good. But cool. So during your time at DreamWorks, I know you were there for about 10 films or so, right? Did you ever transition into leadership there? Were you ever like a sequence lead or like a supervisor or anything while you were there?
No, I did not. There were times where I had a little bit of extra responsibility. That I was technically a lead on Cooper, but I don't think credited. But like someone that anybody who had a Cooper shot could come to me for additional help or advice on shapes or anything like that. I also developed the library of shapes for his expressions and things like that. But it's unofficial and was not leading a sequence or anything like that.
Okay. So that brings me up to, I guess, how and when did you know or decide that it was time to transition away from DreamWorks? What brought about that decision, and how did you kind of come to that?
Great question. So primarily it was family driven. Is that by the time I was there for like 10 years, I was married then and had two small kids. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we were very far away from any of our family, and it was hard. And so we wanted to live closer to family and have the kids grow up kind of knowing their grandparents in person instead of only through Skype. And so that kind of was the push to find a way to still do what I love, but not in LA. And so leaving DreamWorks was kind of a requirement for that. So I had to find a way to support my family that wasn't going to be disastrous or terrifying, which I thought it was going to be, and start to transition away so we can move back to the Midwest to be closer to both my family and my wife's family.
Okay, and at this time, are you still teaching?
Yes. So that was a little bit of extra income, but it wasn't going to be enough to
Yeah.
support the family of four.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even in the Midwest. Yeah. Okay.
Even in the Midwest, yes. So the goal was to try to find some sort of, like, there were no studios around the area that we wanted to live in outside Chicago. There's not a whole lot. There's maybe like one or two small studios that might be in the city, which was also a challenge because I wanted to be able to be at home for my family and not have to commute for like 2 hours every day there and back. So there were very limited options. And so that kind of forced my hand into figuring out what could happen with remote freelance work. And luckily David Hubert, who I worked with at DreamWorks for a while, had by that time already left DreamWorks to be running up the cinematic department at Eidos Montreal. And so he offered me a remote animation position to work on facial animation for the cinematics they were working on for the Tomb Raider games and I dropped the name of the other one, but it's right on the tip of my tongue. But facial animation for video games, and so that gave me a little bit of maybe this can work because the contract was for like a year and a half or something.
Oh wow!
So
Okay.
like at least I had a year and a half to figure out what else comes next, and it gave a little bit of a reassurance that it could be possible to work remote freelance.
Yeah, that's a really long contract for remote freelance. So that's you can do worse than that. Awesome. Okay, so that brought you some cushion and some I guess some leeway. When, where, and how did Agora come about? Were you part of the founding of that, or were you brought on to that team?
So, how I just said, David Hubert got me the job for that. He is one of the founders of Agora, and he had this idea of like community of artists, and he had it for him and some other people had it for a while. I think they had actually founded the company for a few years without doing much with it, but it was when kind of around the same time that I had started working for Eidos Montreal with him that some studios started approaching him and saying, could you work on these projects that we have? And he said, I can't, but I might know some people who can. And so then that started of like him hooking up me with this other project, or it's another artist with this other project. And that was kind of the start of what is now Agora, which is helping people find work in different projects and studios, connecting artists and studios, and also running our own projects at the same time. But that's kind of where it started, was the idea that you could get a network of people, a community of artists that could be available to studios when they need them. And so it was around that time when I started working with David that started amplifying. And then from there, I joined as a partner. I think I was probably the first freelancer to be hired for Agora, but then also joined as a partner right after that to then start moving things forward with him.
That's awesome, because there's always been this issue of there's only this handful of little coastal pockets of places where all the studios are, and then everywhere else is like you either have to move or kind of just take whatever kind of tiny types of whatever happens to be in your area, and this has been kind of like a really itinerant field for a long time. So I think it's awesome what you guys have done, and so needed and welcome. And this is all predates the pandemic by a lot, so people were not necessarily familiar with or as comfortable with remote work or like the pipelines for that. So how did you guys go about kind of developing that, or figuring out how to make this work with like different time zones and the file sharing and security and like these types of things?
Yeah, it was real scrappy for a while. We have much better systems now, but there was, some very simple FTP stuff or file sharing. There was, we were also working on much smaller projects at the time that were a little bit more lax on the security measures or requirements. And we found a lot of things out as we went, and every project we got a little bit better at structure or file sharing or permissions or whatever else. And the time zone thing, we've always had people in vastly different time zones across the world, which is fantastic. I love that we're able to do, just like for me, like I wanted to live where I wanted to live but still work on cool stuff, and we're able to provide that for so many other people now, which I love. and the time zones are across the board. And we found that really you don't have to be synced up, sharing the same 9 to 5, no matter what, no matter where you are or anything. As long as you have a little bit of overlap to communicate, to share feedback, or ask questions, or help with tech support. Sometimes just an hour a day is all the overlap we need. And then the rest of the time you can work whenever you want, because you're just kind of going off and doing your thing, and then when it's ready to show, you show it. So we don't force people into a standard time zone of working or anything like that. There are some clients that require that, which are never the most fun projects, but when we have control, we like to let people work whenever they want. And that includes like people in the States too. They're not working a 9 to 5 necessarily. They're working a little bit in the morning, and then they pick up their kids from school and spend time with them, and they come back late at night. Everybody works their own schedule. It doesn't matter when you're working.
Yeah, that's super cool, and that flexibility is so important, especially people who have families or trying to start one or whatever else. I think it's powerful, and it's game changing, really. I mean, there weren't a lot of opportunities like that prior to what you guys put together. So how I guess in the beginning, I know you said some people were approaching David, but how do you guys go about finding work? Like how do you bring in clients? Is there like a kind of a marketing arm or someone who sort of handles all that, or because that seems like that could be like the up and downs of like, oh, we got to bring in more clients or whatever. It could be challenging.
We've always been super lucky with that. That we always, even from the beginning, it was just positive word of mouth from studio to studio, which was awesome. We never really went looking for or advertising for work, which was also kind of by design because we didn't have the capacity for more work. We always were kind of given the same amount of work that we could handle, or just above it, so we would just figure out how to expand a little bit at a time. And so it always came at the right moments of this is now the biggest project we've had, right at the right time to expand a little bit more. And so we were never really actively reaching out and searching for stuff. It always kind of came to us, which we were super lucky for. That just the positive word of mouth of building trust with this small studio that then mentions us to a slightly bigger studio, that then mentions us to a slightly bigger studio, et cetera, et cetera. And we didn't even have a website or any sort of like online presence for a couple of years, I think. Or if we did, the website was extraordinarily rudimentary and wasn't really promoting us very well. It was just, it existed to have like contact information. And so I feel like every bit of growth we've had has always come at the right time. There has, so far, luckily, knock on wood, never been a time where we're scrambling we need more clients or anything like that. It's always been a really perfect evolution so far.
During this time, especially the early days, I know you came on as a partner or whatever, I guess head of animation from Jump, right? Were you actually like on the box doing a lot of the animating yourself, or were you mostly at this point delegating, directing, and like doing these types of more of that type of leadership role?
Definitely animating for a long time. I was animating and leading my teams at the same time. I was one of the animators involved in almost every project we had for a while. Even when we had more than one project at a time, I was had a lot of plates spinning in there at the same time. And then as we, like I said, slowly evolve and start to grow, eventually we need one other supervisor. So we have one supervisor, so I'm kind of helping guide that supervisor while also working on all these projects. And then we need another supervisor. And then now we're at the point where we have, I think, 15 animation supervisors. And so it just keeps expanding and growing in awesome and terrifying ways. But I have slowly and accidentally removed myself from more and more projects because I have so many more things to keep track of and to support people with. So
what was that, I guess, transition like? You mentioned you hadn't really, other than you kind of doing the character lead on the Trolls thing, hadn't really kind of been in that leadership position, but you had done, obviously a lot of teaching, which I'm sure there's a lot of overlap or similarities. What was that like now, like kind of having to manage teams and stuff in that way? Like, what was that learning curve like?
That's a really interesting question, and one I'm still trying to figure out. But it's very different being an animator to being a supervisor or a lead or someone who is helping to support everyone on the team or multiple teams, and it's very hard. It's very hard. It's something that I think kind of requires a lot of understanding that it's I'll put it this way, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I was naive in thinking very early at DreamWorks. I remember thinking that the leads and supervisors are just the best animators, and they need to provide good drawovers and good notes, and that's what makes you a supervisor. And that's like 10% of what makes you a good supervisor. There are so many other things that are involved in actually being an effective leader than providing drawovers and good notes, and that is something that I came to learn through a lot of failures as well. Because to me, it's all about support. And sometimes that is drawovers, and other times it is just listening to the artist or helping them problem solve or trying to figure out a way to get all of the crap out of their way so they can do what they need to do. And I think that was a big turning point for me, was understanding this whole world of what effective leadership actually is, and it's not just drawovers.
So that's interesting. It actually brings me to another question. As you were coming up for all those years at DreamWorks, who were some of, or even before that, I guess, who were some of your mentors along the way? Like, who were some of the people who shaped your leadership style, or kind of took you under their wing to sort of, either in animation or in leadership, like to kind of show you some of the ropes in terms of that?
Man, this list is so long of people who have shaped how I have gotten to where I am, or what sort of style I have, or my animation techniques, or anything. To name some, my best friends at school that were part of that team of 3 that did the animation competition, Tomasz, Jack, and Jim Levisser, those guys helped shape me for sure, and teach me a lot of things about animation and about leadership and working on a team. Dave Burgess was the one who got me the job at DreamWorks and helped me move from cycles into being an animator. Ben Willis, my cube mate, we would talk endlessly about performance choices and character and everything like that. I learned so much from him. Dave Pate was absolutely instrumental in teaching me about performance. He was my supervisor on Jack Frost. And as well as a couple other projects, but yeah, he taught me so much about communicating with an audience, and how to be an effective storyteller, how to be a better actor, how to shape things better, and how to make a performance that connects with the audience. Ted T, one of your other guests, also Ben Willis was one of your guests as well, but Ted T was kind of like an informal mentor to me at DreamWorks as well. He is always so eloquent with his word choice, and speaking with him was always so inspiring, and he helped guide me in a lot of things, not just in animation but also in life, and how to think about things, or how to behave in a studio setting, or how to be a part of a team, things like that. I feel like I could keep
that's
going
a great list,
but it'll just get boring, especially.
No, I mean that's
all these
that's
yes,
that's fortunate. That's a blessing to have had so many people help mold you and to get to rub elbows with so many great minds. To kind of shape your path.
Yeah, and then so that was pretty much DreamWorks. But then I'll just say one leading into Agora. David Hubert has taught me so much about business that I never would have known. And he is an animator, but he understands business really well, and also communication, clear and effective communication, and leadership, and all those things. And I think that he's taught me a lot.
So in your I guess day to day, now that like you say, you're managing many projects at a time and whatnot, how much time do you spend interfacing with clients? Or do you directly are you in like a lot of calls with them in terms of kickoffs and getting feedback in that loop? Like, is that a big part of your role?
It totally depends. Every project is different. There are some projects that I'll supervise, and then I'm in the day-to-day client communications and dailies, things like that. One thing I'm not a part of anymore was client calls of like first meetups and seeing if our studios could work together, sort of thing. I used to be a little bit more involved in some of those, but less and less so now. But I will be in client meetings for the projects I'm on. Occasionally on projects that we haven't exactly figured out the whole team yet, or even the supervisor, and so I'm kind of the interim, gather all the information, get the next person set up for success.
So you mentioned before, having a penchant for performance type shots and more kind of naturalism. I've noticed, at least in some of the projects that I've seen that you guys have touched over there, a huge variety of styles, from something like hyper real like Jibaro to Meeps or something like that. How do you go about, I guess, casting or putting together the team for the type of project that comes in that's going to kind of best be suited for that type of work? Because some of those are vastly different stylistically, or might require a different type of strengths or experience or background. How do you kind of field that?
Totally. Yeah, that's a really good point, Aaron. And the two that you mentioned, Jibaro and the Meeps, were both projects that I supervised on. So there is a lot of stylistic whiplash there too, that it's going from one extreme to the other. But we have so many other projects going on at the same time too, that it's not just those style, but we also have like in-game video animation, or in-engine video game animation, or we have cinematics, or like a commercial or a trailer, or even VR stuff. So there's all different types of the animation medium, as well as styles within each of those. So casting is a very challenging thing. What we have is a gigantic database of people who are willing to contribute to freelancing. So I think right now it's over 4,000 people that are all different professions as well. I think 80% are animators, and then we've got modeling, rigging, surfacing, rendering, all sorts of things like that. The whole gamut from start to finish, storyboarding as well, character design. But because we have so many animators that we are aware of their reels, where they're located, what rate they would like to get, like you name it, when they're available. That's one of the most important ones. And so few people are available at any given time. Not all 4,000 of those people are available right now. Probably 20% are. The rest are currently employed somewhere. And so we will look through, and let's say the client comes to us and says we need to make the Meeps or something. And we'll look through our list of like, here's all the people that are available during the time slot we need. Here's the people that are available full-time instead of part-time, if that's what we are required to do. Here's the people that have that kind of style on their reel, and here's the people that are in the right time zone, if that's a requirement or not. Depends. And then we send out feelers and say like, hey, here's a project that's coming. It kind of looks like this. Would you be interested? And then people have total control over their own lives to say, nah, I'll wait for the next one. Or, yes, I'd like to be considered for that. And then that puts them into a pool of these are the people that are interested and we think would make a good team. And then from there we work with the supervisor who's on it, or the client if necessary, to figure out from that pool of interested people that we think are a good fit, how would we construct the most successful team. And it's not always taking like the best people, all of the best people, because sometimes you also want some people that are going to grow and learn and that you can help teach and kind of shape as you go. So you also balance with a junior or two and things like that. But there's so much that goes into it that we could go on forever. But casting is challenging.
So one thing I noticed is sometimes it seems like you guys maybe handle all of a project, and then other times it seems like you're maybe a contributing studio helping with like Wish Dragon or something like that is part of a larger kind of ecosystem. How do you approach those projects? How do you kind of fold into a larger whole versus something that is maybe totally contained within your kind of pipeline?
Yeah, we absolutely pride ourselves on being totally flexible. So we joke that it's like a buffet, that a client can come to us and like, I want to pick that and that, but I don't want any of that. And so they get to completely customize their experience with Agora. So maybe we are only doing animation or only doing modeling for that. And we, like I said, pride ourselves on the flexibility of just like fitting right into their pipeline. We work with whatever systems they need, whether it's Shotgun or F-Track, or whether they're using Maya or Motion Builder or whatever, that they have certain requirements and we will do everything we can to fit into them. Whereas a lot of other studios will say like, this is how we work and we need you to give us the files in this particular way so that we can get them working. And we try to be as flexible as we can so that we don't have to force them to do anything we kind of bend to what they need.
So we've talked about the client vendor side and relationship and the awesome projects you guys have gotten a chance to touch, but beyond that, and maybe as a byproduct of having a connection with 4,000 plus animators and artists, you guys have just done incredible things for the greater animation community at large, right? You've got kind of the Discord server, you do the anim challenges and all these other types of things. You're putting out free rigs all the time. You guys have coaching and a just huge amount of resources of feedback and shot reviews and all these types of things. How did that part of it come about? Was that always part of the vision, or was it originally kind of set up as a client vendor studio so you guys could work from wherever, and then that stuff was just sort of outpoured from it, or was that kind of part of the plan originally?
So it's kind of all of the above. Yes, it was part of the plan originally because, like I had said, David's vision and the reason he called it Agora was because it was for a community of artists, a collaboration and a collective of like-minded people that want to push each other and learn and share and grow and everything like that. So it was always part of that initial idea. And the first path to get there was to have some income from vendors or from clients and to be a vendor. And then I think, I don't remember exactly, but I want to say it was COVID that kind of pushed the hand of like, let's finally start building that community, that platform. And so we started, I think around that time of when everybody was in lockdown, of the Agora community, which is meant to be like a hub of all things animation. And right now it's in like stage 001, and there are big things coming, and we're redesigning tons of stuff, and there are big plans that are already in motion, and hopefully we'll see some stuff by the end of the year that'll be live and out to the public. One thing that's already going is the free rigs, is that we're putting those out there. But the overall arching idea is to kind of change the landscape of online animation education. Things haven't moved forward too much since Animation Mentor started, which was awesome, and it provided so much to so many people. And then all the other animation schools, of which there are tons of them that are all awesome, follow a very similar model where there's a workshop for a certain number of weeks, which costs a certain amount. And so what we want to do is make all of that freely accessible. And so there is no barrier to entry for people that live in countries with an exchange rate that really prohibits them from signing up for those courses. We want to make it so that you can do it all on your own for free. So the rigs are free, the education is free, all of the information is provided to everyone to help inspire the next generation of artists that hopefully will get to work alongside in the future, next decade, I guess. And the path to get there has been slower than we hoped, but that is still where we're headed, is providing all the information for free. And then on top of that, if you want to, there is you can get like a review from a professional that is about your specific work, and that can help you grow, but it's not necessary. It is possible to do everything with the information that's provided for free. And if you want curated, individualized information, then there's like a small a la carte fee, where it's not like trying to save up for a giant workshop. It's that, whenever you have work to review, there's a small fee to get it reviewed. And we think that it's very affordable, and that's the goal. And so it's only for the individualized feedback and not for all of the information.
That's great. Yeah, I really like that. I mean, I've had students from all sorts of countries, like you say, that it's like so prohibitive to drop $2,000 on a class or something like that, and then even just time flexibility. I remember even when I was taking your class, that was one of the first ones that I took at iAnimate, where I was just so busy that term that I didn't really get to put my best foot forward. I've got 12 weeks or 14 weeks or whatever it was. And that particular 12 weeks, I had like 3 different trips out of town and all this type of stuff going on. And so I'm falling behind and not getting to kind of really get the most out of the class. So offering it in that way is so useful, to kind of, offer that flexibility to people who want it and need it. And like you say, kind of have that information available, I think is really great. It only makes the whole industry better when everybody has access to that good education. That's really great. And I so support what you guys are trying to do over there. That's cool.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And then, like you said, also like the Discord server with building community of people chatting about their work and sharing stuff, and then the animation monthly challenges and things like that. We have a lot of things going on to try to commute.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason we started this podcast, was just to kind of put inspiration out there and like have something that people can throw on while they're working on their blocking or whatever, and just kind of stay inspired and feel, connected to the larger community as a whole. So yeah, kudos to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Great. Yeah, we're making good progress. We're getting down through some of these. You want to spend a little bit of time talking about maybe what some of your highlight projects have been, and do you have any that stick out? I feel like I've been pronouncing everything wrong. I heard you say Jibaro, and I've been calling it Jibaro or whatever. But there's been so many projects you guys have touched. But what are there some that stick out that were really a pleasure to work on in that way?
Absolutely. You've mentioned a bunch of them. And for the Jibaro thing, that everybody does that. And I think technically the Spanish pronunciation is Jibaro. And Alberto is Spanish, so he would always say Jibaro. But then most other people, especially in the States, say Jibaro, which I'm sure he's fine with. That one definitely stuck out. Working with Alberto Mielgo is always a blast and a crazy wild ride. He's such a visionary and an artist of he does all of it. It's that project. All of his projects are so much all him. His hand is in every aspect of it, and he understands every aspect of it. He's an animator and a modeler and a VFX artist, and he does all of the things in addition to his teams that do them. So he's very knowledgeable about everything, which is fantastic because you can talk to him as an animator too. He understands the lingo, he understands what is a challenge and what isn't, and everything like that. Then you mentioned the Meeps. Working with Olivier, who directed that was his directorial debut, which was awesome. And he was also the head of animation on Wish Dragon, which you mentioned, and he was the head of animation on Penguins of Madagascar, which you also mentioned. So he is another one that is just an absolute pleasure to work with, and his passion is so palpable, and he's always excited to talk about all things animation, and you learn so much from working alongside him or with him. And he will do very detailed drawovers and talk about spacing for hours if you want to. He is very passionate and super talented. Let me see, what are some of the other highlights? I really liked working on, this was in the DreamWorks days, was Rise of the Guardians. It didn't get a lot of critical acclaim or audience love, but I had such a blast working on that project with the team, alongside Ben Willis and Dave Pate, and how much I learned. And Peter Ramsey, the director, was awesome that he would talk to the animators as actors, not necessarily like micromanaging, I need you to close the fist a little tighter sort of thing. It would be, I don't quite feel the anger in this moment. What can we do and then it was your job as the actor and the animator to figure out how to push the anger. And it might not be the fist. It might be a series of other things, maybe little subtle things in the face, but you get to help design that performance because he's talking to you as an actor instead of micromanaging the animation.
You bring up such an interesting point because, I asked you about projects and your answers were about people, and that's such a great point that a lot of people don't understand, right?
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, so people don't really realize that so much, but a lot of times, especially once you get further into your career, or if you're in a studio environment where there's opportunities to work on different projects, a lot of times you find yourself gravitating towards a specific supervisor, a specific director that makes a project enjoyable in that way, more so than even what the actual project necessarily is. It's like being on a team with totally the right people that can inspire you and give you that trust and respect in that way, like you described. Just makes such a big difference in how much you enjoy a project, regardless of what how it turns out or what it does at the box office or whatever. So I think that's a really good point.
That's super interesting. I didn't even notice that about my answer. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out.
No, yeah,
that is very interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. So we're kind of coming towards the end of our time. So I usually like to kind of pivot and just kind of get a little weird with it, right? Just to kind of see, do some thought exercises, right? You've had, a pretty long and quite successful career at this point in animation. Hypothetically, if you hadn't gone into animation, what are some of your other interests or something else you could have seen doing with your life? in a parallel universe.
That's interesting. Well, like I said, I was after animation for a long time, so that's a hard question. I know a lot of people that had different career paths, and then eventually they found animation, or took a while to get there. But I was always trying to chase it, and I want to be a part of it. I guess my answer would be a lawyer, because I always liked making an argument. It was like TV lawyers, like criminal trial attorneys, not like contract law or things like that, not real estate law, but like TV lawyers, like making an argument for somebody. That I enjoyed doing that, and I think my parents would probably say the same, that I was always making an argument.
I got told that a lot growing up, saying you should be a lawyer. You always argue with everything. Okay, it's critical thinking. I don't know. Awesome. So, what would you say? You have such an interesting position, where you have your hand on the pulse and kind of plugged into the industry in a really interesting way, where you kind of have almost like choices of like different things to be involved with, and you're really kind of spearheading something that is having sort of a groundswell impact on the industry. What would you say excites you about the future of the industry? What are there any things that you'd like to see the industry gravitate towards, or other types of stories or projects you'd like to see more of, or anything like that?
Yes, that's a great question too. Man, you have some really good questions. I am interested to see, and I'm pushing for, and we're creating at Agora, more adult storytelling in a dramatic way using animation, which I'm really excited for, and I hope that other people are as well. And we saw a big push forward with that with Love, Death, and Robots, in a way that was all about like violence and gore and love and death. I mean, it's all in the title. But there isn't a whole lot of like more of the dramatic storytelling. There's a lot of really awesome stuff in there, and I love it, and it helped push things so much forward. But we're telling a story right now with Agora's first short film that is much more on the dramatic side, more like if I don't know how to relate it, but kind of like a Black Mirror sort of thing, that it's not always about death or violence, but it's about kind of the human condition as it relates to technology as well, and there's some drama to it. It's more of an adult drama sort of thing, as opposed to a violent thing.
That's exciting. And I mean, I've heard a lot of people kind of, echo that sentiment, of course, especially here in the West. We've got always trying to overcome this stigma of animation just being for kids, or just family films or whatever. And there's place for it. And, we've seen things, do very well, like Arcane or whatever was really well received, and even Spider-Verse or whatever. But a lot of times, to your point, those things do tend to be, kind of deal with either like violence, or like a lot of sex, or, whatever. It's like adult doesn't have to mean like, just gore and blood and all that type of stuff. It could just mean, something that's, more, quiet or introspective, or just makes you think, or, there's a lot of things to still be explored there. And I hope they find ways to get made and find their audiences. So I'm excited to see what you guys are cooking up. Cool. Let's see.
Thanks, man.
So at this point, I mean, you've done a lot of things. You've touched a lot of things. You're ahead of animation, which is, kind of like as high as your title can kind of, go in a lot of ways. Do you have other career aspirations? Like, do you want to direct, or are there other types of things that you still kind of have on your bucket list that you'd like to achieve during your career?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved as I've grown up. So, like, if you were to ask me the same question 10 years ago, still at DreamWorks, I would have said no. But currently, I am directing that short film that Agora is doing. So, I love storytelling, and I love writing, and I was interested in trying to direct this story that I wrote. And so that's where we're at right now. And I don't know if I'm successful at it yet, but I'm terrified, and I'm having a lot of fun, and we're trying our best, and so we'll see what that brings. But yes, I absolutely love storytelling and writing and directing in a way that I didn't think I would have 10 years ago. So yeah, I've grown and evolved in different ways than I would have expected.
That's awesome, man. And I know you've got a lot of continued growth, and a lot of I'm sure ideas in your head that the world needs to have you get out. I think that's
We'll see.
yeah, I'm excited to see what you brew up. Like I said, well, thank you so much for your time, Jacob. This has been fantastic. It's always nice to catch up and just picking your brain for a bit. I think this is really some really inspiring stuff, and just the fact that so many people come up and they're just shooting for the studio system, and the fact that you were able to pivot and create something new and create opportunities for so many people who may or may not want to necessarily take that path is just so cool. I think that's awesome, and part of the reason I wanted to have you on, because not everybody kind of has that perspective on it. As we close up our time together, are there any kind of final thoughts or musings or just any inspiration you would want to offer to the viewers, just to kind of leave us with?
Oh man, what pressure.
Yeah, not to put you on the spot.
Always ask questions. I think that's something that people are afraid of a little bit, and I get why, but don't be afraid to sound stupid, because you won't. Just ask questions. Whether you're just starting on a new project, or just starting at a studio, or just starting with a team, ask all the questions. Don't you under this impression like, I should know this, so I shouldn't ask it. Just ask it. Nothing bad will come of it, and you'll only be furthering yourself because of it, and you might really need the answer. So don't be afraid to ask questions. That's I think the first thing that comes to mind.
There's probably someone else in the room who was afraid to ask but also needs the answer a lot of times. So
that's
you
a good point
can
too.
help the people around you as well. So wow, man, that was a really great answer, and something practical that people could take away. So I appreciate you for that. Thank you again. This has been great. It's been my absolute pleasure. And yeah, like I said, you guys we're in for a treat with this one. I knew that Jacob would bring the goods. He never disappoints. Yeah. So if you guys are not part of the community, figure out how to plug in. Do you have any website or anything you want to plug in terms of people who are maybe interested in getting on you guys' roster or the Discord or any of that?
Agora community is really what I would encourage everybody to go to and be part of that community that is growing, and things are changing. Like I said, we're building out more stuff. There's more free rigs coming. The website's going to be changing. We have a lot of new features that are upcoming, and more training and free content that'll be coming out.
Awesome. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, thank you again for your time. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe. We got a lot more great episodes coming, so you don't want to miss those. Stay tuned in. We got a lot of things coming down the pipe. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time here on CG Riff. Bye.
And thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye.